Hello, my name is Daniel Sullen, and I'm in the ERMA 8200 spring class of 2019 at Auburn University. And the topic that I've chosen for my presentation is Youth Influence in Education of Disadvantaged Adults in the Black Belt region of Alabama. One of the reasons why I decided to do this topic is because because of my title as a 4-H Foundation Youth Development Agent, I'm often coming in contact with young people in the different communities that I serve. I've had the pleasure of serving several Black Belt counties during my 8 years with Alabama Cooperative Extension System, which include Macon, Bullock, Perry County, Dallas County, and Lowndes County. And those of you who are familiar with the region of Alabama, you will know that these counties are all in the Black Belt, and they share a lot of the same disadvantages and challenges that other counties in the state may not face. All right, so introduction. Um, Youth and adult relationships have always been there. They've always been present in today's society. There's been a little research and a little history on how these relationships kind of manifest themselves. A lot of times, a relationship is based on, guidance from an adult to a youth, but oftentimes is the you have the youth who often tends in helping the adults. The history of youth and adults engaging, um, even though it's not documented, it is very well known. Those of you who have children and who work with youth know that this relationship and this history goes way back before it was recorded and researched. A lot of this engagement is very informal. A lot of times, um, young people will end up teaching adults a lot of different things that we've never really considered or we didn't know. A lot of this includes new technology. If you've ever been taught how to use a function on the cell phone or on the computer or on the iPad by a young person, this would be a form of kind of like an informal education or influence. A lot of times, young people can have a better impact on opening the minds of adults. Um, One of those things, could be LGBTQ. A lot of parents may not be open to the idea of having that until they have a child or a friend who has a child who experiences some of these things. ESL, English as a second language. That's another dynamic that is often never really considered. One of the counties that I serve is Bullock County, and they have a high Hispanic population there. And oftentimes, the kids that I work with, they will be the only person that speaks English in their family. And sometimes they have to go home and translate to their parents, which is also kind of like a form of influence slash education. Uh, Literacy, also in Macon County, there's a high illiteracy rate. You will be surprised at the number of adults that don't know how to read. Because of this, the children who go to school, they can read, and sometimes they will have to read the mail for their parents, help them to pay bills, and all those kind of things. So you can just imagine, um, just considering all of these things, even farming families, that's something that's not often discussed. But when I was at Fort Valley State University, I had a lot of classmates who were in the horticulture field like myself, but their parents had sent them to school to learn new farming practices so they can learn these techniques and bring them back to their farm to kind of help improve the yield at their farm. So these are a lot of things that are kind of happening. This relationship is happening a lot, but it's just never really talked about. There's very few research done on this. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of explore this subject. So therefore, the purpose of my research is to examine the potential for you to influence and or educate economically disadvantaged adults throughout the Black Belt region of Alabama. One of the reasons why I chose this demographic is because this is often the demographic that's disadvantaged in throughout the Black Belt. Um, when you are economically disadvantaged, that kind of stems to a lot of other things, poor education, poor health, et cetera, et cetera. So one would think that if you can improve someone's economic situation, a lot of those other factors will kind of improve. Also thought about how youth could possibly serve as somewhat of an influencer of these adults. If you have an adult, who is unfamiliar with how to use the computer, and their young person or their child teaches them how to use a computer, it could probably help them with their job search. That's just one of those avenues that where this could lead to. So, needless to say, I really wanted to kind of like kind of start the thought process of potentially using youth as an avenue to educate these disadvantaged adults. A lot of times these adults, work 24/7, so they may not have the means to go to school, they may not have the funds to go to school, and they may not have the time to go to school. So sometimes, the education that they can receive can come in the influence or the education that their young people have received at school or in the community or just in everyday lives. So we want to just try to examine if this is a possibility. How well will adults receive this, influence or education? Um, so, so a lot of the literature that I found, pretty much supports this idea. Although there isn't a lot of research out there about this topic, there is some information out there. Diogenes stated that the foundation of every society is the education of its youth. And if you are familiar with him, he was a Greek biographer. And, the same can be said about, reversing this statement. The foundation of every society is the education of its adults. And this can kind of be examined when we look at different scenarios that are examples that are happening across the country, where you will see young people teaching adults. Like we discussed earlier, this happens all the time. For example, there is an organization in Arizona called Teen Years, and what this organization consists of is teenagers, and they go out into the community and they teach senior citizens how to operate new technologies such as cell phones, computers, iPads. They try to teach them to become tech savvy, and it's actually been very effective. Like we mentioned earlier, farming families are sending their children who are interested in taking over the farm to school so they can learn those farming practices and come back and help the farm out. ESL parents, the same thing. They're going to school, learning the English language, coming back and teaching their parents. First generation high school graduates. You'll be surprised in the Black Belt how many adults have not received a high school diploma. And a lot of times, their influence, their young people's influence on receiving that diploma, being the first person in their family to go to college, could actually serve as an influence to the rest of their family and possibly change the path of their family for generations to come. So this influence in education is very powerful. It's not really talked about a lot, but I feel that if it is studied enough, we will find that this happens all the time. So as a result, I formed this study, and the data analysis was used with IBM SPSS data analysis program. We used descriptive statistics and frequency. Those were the things that were measured. We ended up having 70 participants in our online survey instrument provided by Auburn University's Qualtrics. Our constructs consisted of youth, adults, subject, and environment. All questions were Likert type. 20 of the questions were Likert type, and the other 5 questions actually recorded just basic demographic information. Our dependent variable was youth influence, and independent variable was disadvantaged adults. So the results. Adults responded strongly overall to youth influence in education. The participants recognize the value in youth knowledge. One of the things that we were able to see is that adults really do appreciate when young people are providing them some kind of education of technology. They also recognize the importance of interacting with youth in their community. We also found that adults agree that youth are capable of teaching difficult and unfamiliar subject matter to adults. So was very positive. This is kind of what we expected from our results, and we will talk about that a little bit later. Our discussion, it was concluded that further research is needed to examine this phenomenon. Excuse me. Um, like I said, there's very few research to kind of support, some of the conclusions that were made from our results. Um, if I had a chance to do this study over, I would probably improve my constructs. Um, this is a topic that I plan to do in the future, so I will continue to modify and improve my constructs. The target demographic was not actually the target demographic that we chose in the study. The target demographic for us for the study included disadvantaged adults throughout the Black Belt, which consists of adults at different housing authorities across the Black Belt. And we were only able to examine adults who had education. The survey that we took, results yielded that all of our participants had received high school diploma or further, and the majority of them had received masters. So it's kind of hard to gauge, these results and compare them to how it would impact disadvantaged adults when our demographic actually wasn't demographic adults. I'll also do my surveys in a timely manner. The surveys were only available for a week. I believe that it will probably take a few months for us to have these surveys distributed and completed and analyzed. I also feel that if we had more time, and we will be able to have more participants in the survey, probably yield us stronger results. And I will also have more data analysis. As I stated earlier, we only recorded the descriptive statistics as it was required for the class, but in the future, I will do multiple linear regression, some correlations, and also check for significance. I think all of those are very valuable and really provide more weight to our study. So this is pretty much the conclusion of my study. Overall, I feel like the pilot study was pretty decent, just to start out. This study is the beginning of an untapped phenomenon. And like I said earlier, this is kind of like the best known secret. It is happening all around us. Everybody who's been touched by or influenced or has learned something from a young person, hey, that's probably like a form of adult education provided to you by a young person. Thank you so much for your time and attention. And I really do appreciate everything that I've learned in this class. And have a good day.